Welcome everyone to another learning session. We have already covered Cloud Computing 101, where we learned a lot of things in general with respect to cloud computing. Then we also learned Azure Cloud 101, where we learned a lot of things, and I'll list down those things shortly. And this is Azure Cloud 101 Part 2, which can help you further understand what all services are there in Azure Cloud. In Part 1, we learned the general architecture of Azure Cloud. And in this one, we'll be learning about the services under various categories. This will also be one of the most boring sessions for some people. And at the same time, this is also an important topic for your Azure Fundamentals certification. From an Azure Fundamentals certification perspective, you'll have to learn all the names of services and categories that we are going to discuss today. But you don't have to actually go a lot deeper into each of these things. You can definitely do that if you have time, but otherwise, at least learn all the service names and then understand what they are doing and basically their categories. But if you are interested, you can still dig deeper. And also for some of these sessions, we will have other 101 sessions, which will be explaining a little bit more about these topics. I'll list down the names of those 101 sessions. Some of them have already been out, and some of them will happen in coming days. Azure Cloud 101 Part 2, getting started with Azure Services and Management Tools. The prerequisite is Azure Cloud 101 Part 1. The prerequisite for Azure Cloud 101 Part 1 is Cloud Computing 101. In Azure Cloud 101 Part 1, we discussed about geographies, regions, availability zones, then region pairs, then subscriptions and management groups, resources and resource groups, role-based access control, Azure Resource Manager, tags, and a lot of things about Azure Active Directory. Today, we will be discussing about Azure Core services first. Under that section, we'll be discussing about the services under compute, networking, storage, databases, and messaging. And then we will see what is this Azure Marketplace. And also, we will look into some of the services under various solutions, such as Internet of Things, data analytics, machine learning, serverless, and DevOps. And finally, we will see some of the tools that can help you manage and monitor your other services in Azure. Quickly, if you are new, I am Hatin Kanigatotu, and I have written few books. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. So Azure Core workloads. The core workloads can be categorized into a few sections: compute, networking, storage, databases. And then you can also use Azure Marketplace to get solutions from Microsoft and even from other people. And we'll also add messaging to this list, even if it is not part of core certification syllabus. Azure Compute Services. You have virtual machines. We have been hearing virtual machines a lot from Cloud Computing 101 and even after that, so you should be familiar. Virtual machines, as you know, are the first layer or first level, which is infrastructure as a service. Now you have to think and tell me what about the others, app services. Is it IaaS or is it PaaS or is it serverless or anything else? Platform as a service. You can deploy your apps written in Java or .NET or any of the supported languages directly into app services without worrying about installing, managing, and configuring your operating system and even the runtime. And if the language is not supported by default, then you can use a Docker container, then deploy the container here. So you have options to deploy your applications without worrying about managing the infrastructure. And there is also one guy called Serverless that we will see later. In Serverless, you don't have to even manage your application. You have to only worry about your code. So here your application needs to be there. But there, even that application need not be there. You can just write code and then ask Azure or any cloud to run. And then you have container instances. Hope you have an idea about what containers are and what a container orchestration is from Cloud Computing 101. And then if you remember container orchestration, you will be definitely remembering about Kubernetes. And Azure has Azure Kubernetes service. And finally, Windows Virtual Desktop, a very popular service these days, especially because of all the work from home. Okay, Azure Virtual Machines. Azure Virtual Machines are software emulations of physical computers. You know that. You know about hypervisors and a lot of things from Cloud Computing 101, right? They include virtual processor, memory, storage, and networking. It is a IaaS offering. And with virtual machines, compared to PaaS and other solutions that we will see soon, you have complete flexibility because it is just like your system. Behind the scenes, as you know, multiple virtual machines may be part of a single physical machine, and the software that makes that happen is your hypervisor. Once you log into that virtual machine, it will be almost similar to how you will log in and work with your laptop or desktop. So it provides a complete flexibility, and at the same time, it gives you a lot of responsibilities also. Like in many superhero movies, you would have heard with the great power comes great responsibilities, right? So similarly here with great power, you also have a lot of responsibilities. But these days, people do not want those extra responsibilities. They just want to take care of their business needs. So that is where services such as app services can help. Azure App Service is a fully managed platform to build, deploy, and scale web apps and APIs quickly. By default, it can work with many technologies, including .NET, .NET Core, Node.js, Java, Python, PHP, etc. It is a PaaS offering with enterprise-grade performance, security, and compliance requirements. And also, as I mentioned earlier, if you do not have your supported language available with Azure App Services, you can use Docker container with App Services itself. And it provides you with a lot of additional functionalities, especially those can help you with building pipelines. Without Azure App Services, if you are to use virtual machines, you will have to do all those DevOps things on your own. But here, you get that out of the box. Even you have features that can help you deploy things faster and even roll back things faster. You have deployment slots through which you can have different slots for staging, production, etc. And you deploy into one of them, say staging, and your production is already running. Just one click to swap, and your production will now become staging, and staging will now become production. And after that, if you feel like, okay, oh my God, I have put in some change to production that shouldn't have been gone, then you can again with another click bring everything back. So your new staging will become production, and production will become staging. All these things comes out of the box without much effort from your side. With virtual machines, you can imagine if you had to do all these things on your own, how much time it will require. So generally, when it goes from infrastructure as a service to platform as a service and then to serverless, people see a slight increase in pricing. One of the roles I had at my organization was to be an architect who also looks into reducing cost. And when I proposed in one scenario, app services over virtual machines, so suddenly questions came from some other managers who are playing around with Azure pricing calculator. Virtual machine is cheaper than app services. Then why do you suggest app services so that we can reduce cost, which is higher cost for people or cost for services? Definitely cost for people, right? So managing these things manually will require a lot of maneuvers. That is something that we always ignore. So next, Azure container instances, a PaaS offering that runs a container without the need to manage a virtual machine or additional services. And then you have Azure Kubernetes service, an orchestration service for containers with distributed architectures and large volumes of containers. You can definitely explore more about Docker and Kubernetes. It is a very good area to explore. We have a little bit of Docker and Kubernetes also in Azure 104. But again, it is mostly from Azure perspective, how these containers work. But if you really want to work on this, then you should definitely explore more about Docker and Kubernetes, not from Azure perspective, but in general. Then we have a Windows Virtual Desktop. You can set up Azure Virtual Desktop, formerly it was called as Windows Virtual Desktop, in minutes to enable secure remote work. It reduces cost with pooled multi-session resources. So basically, behind the scenes, it will still use virtual machines. But again, even those virtual machines can be pooled or shared between multiple people. Okay, so it is a very innovative concept. And then with the recent work from homes and new online opportunities, this has become a very important help for many industries and many companies. Azure networking services, starting from Azure Virtual Network. You may be having some basic idea about networking, right? So here, when I say virtual network, so Azure itself is a network, and within that, we can create a virtual network. And unless we create a path between two virtual networks, these are completely separate entities on cloud. So if I create a virtual network 1, and if I create virtual network 2, and within those networks, I deploy some virtual machines, they will not be able to talk to each other unless you have protocols and all defined. So if they are allowed to go to internet, definitely they can connect through internet. But otherwise, if they want to connect directly, then you have to do something called as virtual network peering and all. So all these things are discussed in much detail as part of 104, and also AZ 700. And we'll also have a networking 101 session where we'll be exploring at least some of these along with a lot of behind the scenes concepts. And then you have a virtual private network gateway used to send encrypted traffic between Azure Virtual Network and an on-premises location over public internet. Most of the enterprise companies these days will definitely have some on-premises workload and then Azure Cloud or any cloud for that matter. So you need ways to send traffic securely between these two places or these two entities. And you have Azure Express Route. It extends on-premises networks into Azure over a private connection that is facilitated by a connectivity provider. I believe we have labs and a lot of notes on these topics in 104 itself, which you will definitely go through. 104 is no more an optional one. It is actually now a part or half of your Azure Architect certification. And it is also half or part of your Azure DevOps certification. After taking 104, you can decide whether I want to take 400 and become a DevOps expert, or whether I want to take a 305 and become a architect expert. Even if you don't want to go to any of these paths, it is always advised to take 104 after your 900 certification. And even for people taking a 204, I advise them to take 104, at least the course. You don't have to take the certification if you're not interested, because with the 204 also you can take a 400 and get a DevOps expert. But with 204, you don't have a architect option. So if your goal is for a developer plus a DevOps role, you can definitely take a 204 plus 400. But again, even for them, I suggest you go through the content of the course for AZ 104 and then focus more on 204. With my suggestions, even Trainso has started a 104 plus 204 batch. Next comes storage. So you have compute, networking, and storage. So these are the core things in any cloud, right? So in storage, you have a lot of different options. You have a container blob storage, which is optimized for storing massive amounts of unstructured data, such as text or binary. As you may be knowing, data can be categorized into unstructured data, all your videos and all those music and all those things. Then semi-structured data and even structured data. We will cover them as part of data 101. But I thought at least little bit peek into those things can help you understand these things. And also you have a disk storage, which provides a disk for virtual machines, applications, and other services to access and use. And blob storage, the first one, is also called as an object storage. If you are coming from other clouds, you may have heard about Amazon S3. This is the Azure version of it. Then you have disk storage. It provides disk for virtual machines. Your laptop or desktop, whatever it is, it will definitely need this, right? So in cloud also, whenever you are creating a virtual machine, it will need a disk or maybe more than one disk. Then you have Azure Files. They set up a highly scalable and highly available network file share that can be accessed by using a standard server message block or SMB protocol. You may have come across shared drives, right? So with Azure Files, you can create those share files. And also, then your Azure storage account or storage service also supports two more, which is a table storage and queue storage. Table storage we will see as part of storage sessions, and queue storage we will see as part of messaging sessions. And when it comes to blob storage, you have three different tiers. The default one is hot, which is optimized for storing data that is accessed frequently, your normal day-to-day operations. Then you have a tier called cool, optimized for storing data that is infrequently accessed and stored for at least 30 days. So if you have some data that you may not be using every day, and at least you have a use case where you need to store at least for 30 days, and then whenever you need it, you immediately want it. In such cases, you can use cool. Both in hot and cool, you'll get the data immediately back, but the pricing differs. With hot, your storage cost is more and access cost is less. With cool, your storage cost is less and access cost is more. Okay, and with archive, it is effectively a offline storage solution. It is optimized for storing data that is rarely accessed and stored for at least 180 days with flexible latency requirements. That basically means that you will not be able to get the data immediately like hot or cool, but it will take some time. And the time can differ again based on whether you are willing to pay more price or less price. So you have three: hot, cool, and archive. With hot, you have highest cost for storage, and with archive, you have least cost for storage. And with hot, you have least cost for access, and with archive, you have highest cost for access. So it is a trade-off, and then you can decide what you want to use for your particular project. So as I mentioned, we will explore more in storage 101 session, or even the storage session in AZ 104 if you are attending it. Then you have Azure Database Services. Azure Cosmos DB is a NoSQL database. How many of you understand the differences between SQL and NoSQL? We will definitely explore in detail in a data session. But in general, whenever you have data, you have different kinds of data, as I explained before. You have different kinds of data. And then within those kinds of data, you have two major categories. One is relational data and one is non-relational data. Relational data is data that you can put into tables where every row in a table or every entity in a table will have the same columns or same fields. Like an employee database. All the employees in your company will have same fields or same columns, your salary or your designation, whatever it is. So all these fields will be common for all the employees. And there will be also data that cannot be put into a table structure or a strict table structure. For some kind of data, like unstructured data, you may not be able to put it into any table structure. We use Azure Blob Storage. But for semi-structured data, you can generally use a NoSQL databases. The interesting thing is that unlike your relational database, for NoSQL databases, you don't have a single type. With relational, you have SQL-based databases, and then almost all of them are similar. And you query them using a language called SQL. That is why it is called SQL databases or structured query language databases. Your cloud provider can add small features on top of the standard SQL. That is fine. But in general, they follow a set of properties called as ACID properties. How many of you have heard about this ACID property? You can quickly Google ACID properties and then share it here. I'll start with A for atomicity, C for consistency, isolation and durability. Good. Okay, so generally relational databases follow these ACID properties. And in general, non-relational databases follow something else called as base. Now you can search for base for non-relational databases and then tell what BASE stands for. But the most important one in that base is eventual consistency. In general, with the relational databases, you have a consistency. And with the non-relational databases, you have eventual consistency. But these days, many of the non-relational databases also have strong consistency option. But they will be giving up on few other things. For example, Azure Cosmos DB has 5 levels of consistency. If you see similar ones in Amazon, which is Amazon DynamoDB, you have 2 consistency levels. One is strong consistency, one is eventual consistency. But with Cosmos DB, you have lot. You have strong at one end, eventual at other end, and then in between, you have more ones. You have session, you have other consistency levels that are based on a version delay or time delay. So you have a lot of flexibility with Azure Cosmos DB. That is one advantage of Azure Cosmos DB. And then when I talked about NoSQL in the beginning, I told, right, NoSQL is not just like relational. You have different types. And primary types include, you have key value pairs, you have document stores, you have graph databases, you have columnar databases. Under document, you have MongoDB, which is a popular one. Under key value, you have Redis, which is a popular one. Under graph, you have Neo4j. Under columnar, you have Cassandra, you have HANA. Unlike each of these databases which supports one model, Azure Cosmos DB supports multiple models. It is a multi-model, multi-master database. Multi-model means you can go with a document store based, either by going with the core SQL option. Core SQL is one of the models that is there, is document based, or you can go with the MongoDB based, or you can go with the Cassandra based, or you can go with the graph based. So there are a lot of options within the Cosmos DB itself that you can choose. And there are also very easy migration paths from all of those things. For example, from a standalone MongoDB to Cosmos DB, or from Cassandra to Cosmos DB. So it is a big area. So NoSQL databases itself is a big area. And definitely, if you are interested, you can attend NoSQL or data-related sessions. And then you have Azure database for MySQL. So Azure SQL database is basically your Microsoft SQL Server database running as a service on Azure Cloud. And whenever a database is running as a service on cloud, it is PaaS. And Azure SQL database also has a serverless option. So basically, you have to pay based on usage rather than paying based on number of hours your service is up and running. And similar to Azure SQL database, which is the cloud version of SQL Server, we have as a service for MySQL and PostgreSQL also, which are also popular databases under the relational umbrella. With any database, one additional option is installing it manually on a VM. That is, SQL Server on a VM gets a complete control and flexibility, but need to manage VMs, allows existing SQL Server components to lift and shift to cloud. But unlike other databases, here Azure provides you with some tools to help you manage this database server on a VM. But again, you have lots of responsibilities. And then there is also something that is between your complete Azure SQL and SQL Server on a VM, which is called Azure SQL Managed Instances. They are still PaaS. They are fully managed and preserves all past capabilities like automatic patching and version updates, automated backups, and high availability. They can exchange existing licenses for discounted rates on SQL managed instance using Azure Hybrid Benefit. So we'll see about Azure Hybrid Benefit when we see about cost. Allows existing SQL Server customers to lift and shift from their on-premises applications to cloud with minimal changes. And with SQL Server on a VM, lift and shift is almost with no changes. So here it is minimal changes. What do you mean by lift and shift? When you work with Azure Cloud migration, you will hear about these terms: lift and shift, refactor, re-platform, re-architect. Okay, all these are different ways in which you can migrate from on-premises to cloud. And lift and shift means you'll just take it and place it here without making any modifications or with very minimal modifications. So we'll explore in Azure Databases 101, Azure Messaging Services. You have Azure Service Bus. It is an enterprise messaging queue and pub/sub platform. So how many of you understand these terms called queue and topic? So these two terms, queue and a topic, are the most important or the basic terms with respect to messaging, irrespective of what solution you use. Queue means one-to-one. You send a message, only one person can receive it. And the idea of queue, you know, right? You may have gone to a movie theater and stood in queue. So first person to enter will be the first person to get out of the queue. So it is also called as a first in, first out mechanism. FIFO. Topic means a single message can be received by multiple people. These multiple people will be all subscribing to a topic, and the producer will be producing message and he will be publishing to this topic, and all the subscribers will be getting those topics. Okay, so this mechanism is also called as publish subscribe pattern. Okay, I have just mentioned the pub/sub here, which is a short form. It is publish subscribe. And again, there is a question about the push notifications. There are two ways in which somebody can take messages from a system. It would be either push or a pull. Push means somebody is waiting and you will be getting those messages. So the system will call you and give that message to you. I'm talking it in very layman terms. When we go to actual messaging sessions, I will use more technical terms. And pull means I am waiting on a system, and then I will be checking regularly. Is there any message? Is there any message? And if message is there, I'll be using it. Both has its plus, minus, and all. We will see them in systems design sessions, but you got the idea, right? So you have service bus, which is a straightforward solution, and then you have event grid. It's a fully managed pub service to build event-driven applications. You have event hub, which you can use for ingest, route, and store streams of millions of events. You have Azure Relay Service. Basically, you can interconnect across sites, data centers, and even across network boundaries. Basically, you can use it to connect between your on-premises and the cloud. You also have a queue storage, which is actually part of your storage account, but again, it decouples components using the concept of queues. So how many of you have heard this concept about microservices? There also, you will have synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. So microservices is a very big topic, we will not go, but you have this concept of synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. Messaging is all about communication, right? Synchronous means your HTTP request and all, you send a request and you get back your response. And whenever you are okay to not get a response immediately, then you can use asynchronous messaging, and queues are a common way to implement asynchronous messaging. You send message to the other person now, another person will be processing those messages from the queue in FIFO order. And whenever he processes your message, he will give you back a response, maybe using a different queue. So synchronous means you send and then immediately get back the response. Asynchronous means you send and you may or may not get the response immediately. And these terms also become important, especially synchronous and all, when you learn and discuss about replication. Last class, we learned about different mechanisms to support fault tolerance and disaster recovery, right? Within a region, generally data is replicated synchronously. That means whenever your data goes to one data center, it is immediately sent to other data centers, and only after that you will get a successful confirmation that okay, data is written. But to other data centers in other region, generally we don't do synchronous operation, it will be asynchronous. So there is a lot to learn. So we are just getting started. Again, we'll have a messaging services 101 session also in future. And finally, if you are not able to get a solution out of the box from Azure, you can go to a Marketplace. And Azure Marketplace allows customers to find, try, purchase, and provision applications and services from hundreds of leading service providers, which are all certified to run on Azure. Applications and services include open source container platforms, virtual machine, database images, and even application development, build, and deployment software. How many of you have heard about this software called WordPress? How many of you have experience writing blogs or reading blogs? How many of you have heard about this blogging platform called WordPress? WordPress you can install on a virtual machine and you can use, or you can install on a app services and you can use. It is an open source software, you can get it freely, or you can go to Marketplace and say that I want WordPress. So what it will do is it will give you WordPress configured in a app services environment or even virtual machines. You can select, okay, which is better for me. Maybe antivirus solutions, maybe some other solutions. There will be a lot of solutions pre-configured you can get from Azure Marketplace. So now comes the second part where we discuss about Azure Solutions. You have things such as Internet of Things, you have data analytics, you have machine learning, you have serverless, you have DevOps, and Azure have services for all of these things. There is an assignment for you. In this section, we will only be discussing what services we have in Azure for various solutions. But we'll not be learning about what are these solutions. We'll not be learning what is AI or ML. We will not be learning about what is IoT. We will not be learning about what DevOps is. In fundamentals, especially in this section, the goal from an exam perspective is to know what services are there and what they do on a high level. You can pick up any of these topics, maybe serverless, maybe DevOps, maybe IoT, maybe ML, and then you can talk about it in a session. You don't have to talk about how serverless work in Azure or how DevOps work in Azure. You can talk it in a from a general perspective. Or about IoT, what IoT is, what ML is, what AI is. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to do. Under Internet of Things, we have three services or three solutions. Azure IoT Central is a fully managed global IoT SaaS solution that makes it easy to connect, monitor, and manage IoT assets at scale. Azure IoT Hub is a managed service, which is a PaaS solution hosted in the cloud that acts as a central message hub for bidirectional communication between IoT applications and the devices it manages. And finally, Azure Sphere is a secured, high-level, hardware-integrated application platform with built-in communication and security features for internet-connected devices. So you can have things at the device side. So tell me one thing, based on your knowledge of SaaS and PaaS and all, out of Azure IoT Central and Azure IoT Hub, which may be the easiest one to use with lesser configuration, lesser effort. Okay, IoT Central, since it is SaaS. And which gives more flexibility out of IoT Central and IoT Hub. So it will be Hub. So basically, in PaaS, you get more flexibility. In SaaS, you get a pre-configured solution that you can use with the minimal configuration. And Sphere has a physical component at your device level. So last day I was looking into an AC feature. While you are coming back from office, through Wi-Fi, you can tell your AC to switch on and then make your room cooler. And then we will have Azure Internet of Things 101 session soon. The next session, Big Data and Analytics, Azure Synapse Analytics. It is a cloud-based enterprise data warehouse. So data warehousing is also something that you can take session on if you want. After data warehouse, another concept became very popular. It is not there in the list actually. This is mostly fundamental specific, right? You have data lake. And now people are exploring the combination of combining a data warehouse with data lake. So can anybody tell me what is the name that people generally use to refer to that combination of or trying to combine data warehouse with the data lake? And then you have another service, Azure HD Insight. It is a fully managed open source analytics service for enterprises. And then you have Azure Databricks. It is Apache Spark based analytics service, again a managed service. You have a lot of options more than what is listed here. These things we will be mostly discussing in our Azure Data Engineering session. Then you have AI and ML solutions, artificial intelligence and machine learning. Azure Machine Learning, a cloud-based solution to develop, train, and deploy machine learning models. AI stands for artificial intelligence and ML for machine learning. So these days, people are all running behind AI and ML. So if you don't know, definitely read about it and maybe take a session on it as part of your student presentation. Basically, these things will train a system to think like humans and take decisions like humans or maybe better. So cognitive services quickly enable apps to see, hear, speak, understand, and interpret a user's needs. So these days, most of the apps can hear, speak, and all, right? So like you can say, Alexa, reduce my sound of TV. And you have Azure bot service. You can develop intelligent enterprise-grade bots. Maybe we should build one for our CloudRix community also. We will explore that also in detail. So serverless computing, Azure Functions and Logic Apps are two categories under serverless computing. When I was writing the book, function as a service was the main serverless idea. And here in Azure, you have Azure Functions, AWS, you have AWS Lambdas. Basically, you only write function and everything else will be taken care. And mostly it will be event-based. You can say that when a request comes from internet through HTTP, invoke this function and do something. But these days, the concept of low code or no code is also getting popular. As I mentioned today, I'll be introducing you to a lot of new terms, which will definitely help in your whole career as an architect or an engineering manager or somebody growing up the ladder. So how many of you have heard about low code or no code? Basically, it is a way of getting the results without coding. Okay, in simple terms, it is a way of getting results without coding. So you can use workflows to say, okay, if this happens, that happens, this, just by dragging and dropping, you can build business solutions. So even without coding, you can get what you want through low code and no code. And in Azure, the solution for low code and no code is Azure Logic Apps. Automate and orchestrate the tasks, businesses, processes, and workflows to integrate apps. Azure Serverless, or maybe we can have a Serverless general session soon. I've taken a lot of serverless sessions to a lot of colleges, universities, and even during Corona, I had taken one for the whole IEEE faction of Kerala. One perk of being an author in that area, right? DevOps. How many of you here know what DevOps is, and how many of you do not know what DevOps is? So first of all, DevOps is a dev plus ops. It is more than a set of tools. Okay, so if you are new to DevOps, I would strongly encourage you to read a book called the DevOps Handbook. So Azure DevOps is a set of tools. Okay, Azure DevOps is not one tool, it is a set of tools for development collaboration, including it has pipelines, it has boards for managing the project, pipelines for deploying, and it has a repo for storing the code, and it has ways to test your code. So it is a set of tools. And when you learn Azure DevOps, you will definitely come across Azure DevTest Labs, and you can use it to quickly create environments in Azure while minimizing waste and controlling cost. And then you have this thing called JIT and JIT management portal called GitHub. Now it is also a Microsoft company. So you can use it for software development, hosting with version control, source code management, and bug task management. You also have GitHub Actions, which is similar to Azure DevOps pipelines. You can use it for automating a software workflow to build, test, and deploy from within GitHub. I hope you have seen the JIT 101 session to understand what JIT and GitHub is. Else, please watch it. It is already available for you to watch. And irrespective of whether you are a developer or DevOps engineer, you still need to understand JIT. So that is why we had a JIT 101 session before even this session. Okay, we will have a DevOps 101 session soon. Until now, we were discussing about services in Azure. Now we'll see some services and tools that can help you better manage the other services. First of all, we need some way to talk to Azure or communicate with Azure. For that, you have things such as Azure Portal, which is the website, Azure PowerShell, Azure CLI. PowerShell is a Microsoft product, and you can use PowerShell to communicate with Azure. And Azure CLI, which is a command line interface. People generally from Microsoft background or Windows background, I've seen generally use PowerShell. And people generally coming from Linux background, I've seen they use generally CLI. And then, in general, like any cloud, you'll have to install this software, PowerShell or Azure CLI on your machine, and then you can communicate. But when you install, these may not be available for some platforms, but these days, most common platforms it will support. And sometimes you may not have access or permission to install it in your local machine. So what will you do? That is where Azure has a very innovative product called Azure Cloud Shell. You can use a PowerShell and CLI from your portal itself. Okay, that is very innovative. So you don't need to install it everywhere. Then you also have Azure Mobile App. We had already briefly touched upon Azure Resource Manager templates when we talked about ARM. They are basically JSON templates, and you can declaratively say, okay, provision these resources and all. Then you have some monitoring services such as Advisor, Monitor, Service Health. From a management perspective, it is Azure Portal, PowerShell, CLI, Cloud Shell, and Mobile App. And ARM or Azure Resource Manager templates, or JavaScript object notation JSON files that can be used to create and deploy Azure infrastructure without having to write programming commands. You can go to portal and create your Azure resources, or you can run commands from PowerShell or CLI and do. Here, you can create a script with all the configurations and you can just run it. Running part you can do from a portal or PowerShell or CLI. And when you run, that whole setup will be created. So when you have tens and hundreds of deployments to do, manually going and doing it is not at all a feasible solution. So you'll have to go with some infrastructure as a code software, and ARM is one. And you also have other alternatives such as Terraform and Azure Bicep. Terraform is definitely a separate product, and I don't think it will ever come in certification questions. The advantage of using Terraform is you can use it for infrastructure as a code with multiple clouds, not just Azure Cloud. You can use it with AWS, you can use it with Azure. So these days I have seen it common in many companies because many companies want to go in a multi-cloud approach. So Terraform is a very important skill set that you need to acquire if you are going in a DevOps direction. And Azure Bicep is also getting a lot of popularity these days. It is a domain-specific language that uses a declarative syntax to deploy Azure resources. So I am actually introducing you to a lot of terms in this session. Make sure you read through them again or watch this recording again, and based on your interest, you explore more. So just search for these service names in Google and go to Microsoft homepage for these services. You will find two kinds of pages when you search. One is Microsoft product homepage. One is Microsoft documentation page. Documentation page will generally have all the documentations on how to use it. But product page mostly will have a video explaining these things in maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So you can go to the product page first as part of your fundamentals preparation and just see that 2 to 3 minutes of video. Okay, and once you do that, please share it as comments or messages so that it will motivate others also to do. So under monitoring tools, you have Azure Advisor. It analyzes deployed Azure resources and makes recommendations based on best practices to optimize Azure deployments. You have Azure Monitor, which maximizes the availability and performance of applications and services by collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry from cloud and on-premises environments. You can create metrics and all, and then create alerts and all, and then monitor your Azure environment. Azure Service Health provides a personalized view of health of Azure services and regions being used, provides a communication regarding outages, planned maintenance, and other health advisories. Basically, sometimes Azure may also have some issues, so you can see, okay, this issue happened, what is the root cause, and all those things. Okay, we will have Azure monitoring 101 session also. So we will go to Azure portal. So how many of you think you can remember all the names that we heard today? No, right? So try to watch it again. And one technique that I used when I was learning was preparing notes. Sometimes I never go back to those notes again, but still, whenever I have written notes and learned things, it has stayed in my mind for a longer period of time. Okay, something which you can try if you want to try. So I'll quickly go to virtual machines. We had seen virtual machines, right? But still, and you can click on create. You can go to Azure virtual machines, and then you can start by selecting a subscription, and then you can select any resource group, or you can even create a new group. Then you can give some name for your virtual machine. Then you can select a region. We saw, right? You have recommended region and you have other region. With the recommended region, you get all of your availability options. You can select, and then security type you can select, and then you can select what image you want. Then you can select a queue for your uh, virtual machine. You can select based on your need, and as you can see, a cost is different for each of them. And then give a username. Okay, so this is not a perfect username or password. Again, then you can say by default any ports needs to be opened. So in Windows, you do RDP to log into your machine. In Linux, you use SSH. So those ports you can open if you want. Or there are other ways to connect with your system, like Bastion and all that we will see later, without exposing these ports. Then you can see if you have any existing licenses that you want to make use of. Then next you will go and select your disk type, whether it is going to be premium SSD or standard SSD or standard HDD. And then we can select whatever options, whether the disk should be deleted along with the virtual machine or not, and whether encryption type, whether it should be encryption at rest with a customer managed key, or encryption at rest with a platform managed key, or double encryption with the platform managed and customer managed keys. Okay, and whether you need ultra disk, but here it is not supported for this particular size I selected. And then there are a lot of advanced configurations also. Then you go and do your networking configuration. You can select your virtual network, you can select your subnet, you can select your public IP. Don't worry, some of these things will be only clear once you have your virtual network 101 session. So these are all networking essentials. And then load balancing we will see in our systems design 101 session. And similarly, you have management tools, boot diagnostics, enable OS guest diagnostics, and then under identity, under Azure AD, under auto shutdown, you can see, okay, this machine has to be shut down. A good thing for a dev machine, because you are charged per hour, right? So there are a lot of things you can configure. And again, under advanced, you can select more things. Under tags, you can give a key value tag. Department D1. So it is a good practice to always give tags based on cost areas, and then later you can filter your cost based on these tags. You can say, okay, from department 1 you had this much cost, department 2 you had this much cost, and all. Okay, we saw, right, when we discussed about the tax. And before finally creating, you will also see this message, okay, what is going to be my hourly cost. And also it will do some validations to make sure that, okay, everything is fine. So I've made a lot of configurations, right? Even if you do not understand all of these, I've made many configurations, right? And now if I want to create another virtual machine with same configuration, I'll have to do this again, right? That is where you have your ARM templates. If you scroll down, you get this option, download a template for automation. Okay, so otherwise I can directly go and click on create, or I can download this template or add this to library. And then from next time I can deploy from this template so that I don't have to repeat all those configurations. Now, if I go to a storage account, so here also I can create a new storage account. As always, I have to start with a subscription and resource group, storage account name. So what will happen if I give a heart in here? Here, unlike your virtual machine, here it has to be unique, right? So I have to give something which is unique. And select region. I have two options, standard. Under standard, I'll get options for different redundancy types. So locally redundant storage means it will be replicated 3 times within a data center. So it can protect against server rack and drive failures, but not data center failures. ZRS means zone redundant, which means it will be spread across multiple availability zones. GRS means it will be spread across 2 regions. GSRS means it will be spread across availability zones as well as across regions. And also you can make it RA, which means read access. So make read access to data available in event of regional unavailability. So which basically means that from other regions you can read. You have a lot of other options here. Go to networking again. You have a lot of options. Data protection, you have a lot of options. Similarly, once you go to review and create, again, it will do the validation and then you can click on create, or you can download a template. I have already created a storage account. So if you go there, you can find different kinds of storage account options. You can see blob service, you can see file service, you can see queue service, you can see a table service. Lot of options are there. Don't have to worry. I just showed you some common things. If you go to resources and if you search for WordPress, it has 3.7 rating, made by 395 ratings. Okay, you can see all these things, and then finally you can create if you want. And another important thing that we discussed was this guy, Cloud Shell. When you use Cloud Shell, you have this option Bash or PowerShell. You can use PowerShell, or Bash is effectively for CLIP. Okay, if you prefer that, you can do that, or if you prefer PowerShell, you can do that. And when you create for the first time, it will also create a storage account, basically as a backend storage. So you are effectively running things as if you are running from your local machine, right? So in local machine, you'll be storing files. For example, if you want to deploy a ARM template, you need to first keep it somewhere and then you execute the command, right? Similarly, you can keep it here and then execute the command. Just search for AZ900 lab and go to this link. Then practice all these labs. We are not following in this module order. Based on whatever we have learned, you can go through this. You can go with core Azure services, creating virtual machine, creating a web app, deploy Azure container instances, create a virtual network, create a blob storage, create a SQL database, and implement IoT Hub, implement Azure functions, create a VM with template, create a VM with PowerShell, create a VM with CLI, and rest. We have not seen Key Vault or network traffic. RBAC you can still do. Resource looks you can do. Resource tagging you can do. Pricing calculator and TCO calculator we have not seen yet. SLAs we have not seen. Opening a support request we have not seen. So whatever we have covered, you can do that. If you are a very lazy person, then you can at least go through this and see what is happening from the pictures. That is the least you can do. Read everything, see what is happening from the picture. This is for the extremely lazy people. But again, you don't have any lab in your exam. You are supposed to know the basics, and doing these things are not mandatory, but it will really help you understand things in much more speed. So we have gone through a lot of names, service names, a lot of concepts, at least from a high level perspective. We will be definitely going in deep on some of these topics as part of this learning program itself. I hope you have learned at least the names and at least some of the solution areas. And when it comes to working, you will generally be working on some of these areas. Maybe you will be working as an IoT engineer or a data engineer, or maybe a DevOps engineer, or maybe a developer, or an admin. One of the goals of fundamentals course and fundamental certification is to help you decide which path you want to go. Whether you want to go in a developer track or a non-developer track, admin or IoT engineer, whatever it is. Now it is time to think, because you have basic knowledge, and then once you explore more from that 2 to 3 minute videos, right, you will be able to take a better decision, because you will have a better understanding. Even if you do not understand everything, it is perfectly fine. Just mention in the chat, not in the Zoom chat, but in your community group, what all things you did not understand, and I'll make sure you are given a proper training to understand them. I'm always there to help you with your learning goals. Do practice, do listen again if you want, and optionally prepare notes. And most importantly, attend all the live quizzes and ask doubts either in the live quiz or later in our community groups. And also, if you know the answer for any of those questions, help each other rather than always waiting for somebody to get back. And if nobody is able to help, I'll be trying to help you anyways. So that's it. Bye bye for now, and see you all in next class.